Good evening, everybody. And once again, thanks for joining me in San Diego. I am located at my home location here in the North County of San Diego. And we're going to try something a little different this evening. I thought it'd be interesting, well, hopefully anyway. I am a big fan of Robert Burnham Jr. And tonight, what I thought I'd do is what I thought I'd do. And thanks, Dennis, for saying that you love the picture of me and my daughter there. That was actually at one of the SDA outreach events where we were doing face-to-face stuff a couple of years ago, or at least a year ago. What I thought I'd do this evening is use Burnham's Celestial Guide as a sort of a way to find our way around some of the night sky. And in particular, I thought I'd pick the constellation of Cepheus, since Cepheus is completely in view from my location here in San Diego. Well, most of it is, and hopefully as the evening goes on and it rises a little bit more, we'll be able to get the entire constellation. And so I thought I'd use the constellation Cepheus. And for those of you that don't know Burnham, we will hopefully introduce you to him. For those of you that do know Burnham, then and some of this is not going to come as a surprise. But having said that, Burnham's Celestial Guide is an incredible, or Burnham's Celestial Handbook, as I should call it, is an incredible guide to the night sky. Anyway, while I try and figure out what I'm doing here, I am going to do my usual introduction just briefly so that sort of set the scene for everybody. Um, as I said, my name is Gary Hawkins and I'm a member of the San Diego Astronomy Association. And my particular interest is EAA outreach, public outreach, and live streaming. I do a number of these events on a fairly regular basis. Um, for those who've joined, if you have the ability to let us know where you are, who you are, and whether or not you know of Burnham, that would be really good because I do have a chat window going on a separate computer here, and I can see the comments coming in from Dennis, and I've also got somebody else online, Marine Bryce. So good to have you on board, and we've now got 12 people watching. So if you guys have got the ability to type in your chat window, fantastic. So I am located in North County, San Diego. Um, and I've just realized actually with the way that I'm doing this slide presentation tonight, I can't actually show you where that is with my arrow key because normally I would use a PowerPoint presentation, but actually tonight I'm using um, the slide deck feature within OBS, which is my streaming software. And I've just realized that I can't actually do some of the things I normally do. But you can obviously see the map on the screen there, and I'm located just outside of the city of Poway. That is northern gray area. If you sort of go up the map, you'll see the city of Poway, and it's in the red zone there. So I'm Portal 8 here. And welcome James from Colorado, who's actually in San Diego at the moment. So fantastic to have you on board. And Dave, great to have you on board. And tonight I'm trying a themed presentation. So we're talking about Burnham and Burnham's view of the constellation Cepheus. So that's where I'm located. I'm using my standard setup here. It's a 22-year-old 8-inch Celestron Smith Cassegrain. I have a 0.63 focal reducer that sits behind that, a CCD CLS filter in the optical chain to knock down a little bit of the light pollution, and also do UV IR cut, and a 9 megapixels EWO ASI 533 MC camera that sits behind that, which is a square format camera. I also have an E-finder that allows us to get a wider sort of view of the night sky, and all this is mounted on a AVX mount. I'm using SharpCap Pro as the image processing software tonight. Many of you are familiar with with this particular software platform. It's an extremely powerful platform developed by Robin Glover in the UK, and it's kind of the de facto standard for EAA, allowing you to take multiple subframes, stack those subframes up, align them, process them, and display often a very nice image of what you're looking at in a relatively short period of time, typically sort of 2 to 5 minutes. And Jose, welcome. This is a complete list of the equipment and software that I'm using. I won't bore you by going through that list. If you're interested, you can obviously go back to it in review. But I will tell you tonight, for those who've been on one of these live streams before, I am using a different plate solver. I've now got the ASTAP plate solver in place of the All Sky plate solver, and hopefully that will do its job tonight, although I must admit I was having a few problems with it last night, as I seem to generally have some technical issue associated with an EAA transmission. But just in case, I do actually have a pointing model already installed in the mount, so even if we do have problems with the plate solver, hopefully we'll be okay. So our topic this evening is Robert Burnham Jr. And for those of you who are not familiar with Robert Burnham Jr., he was an astronomer at the Lowell Observatory in Arizona for a good number of years. He was actually born in the early 30s and did some high school stuff, but he managed to receive a certain amount of notability when he discovered his first comet. And that led to him being hired by the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona in 1958 to work on a survey of stellar proper motion. And he did that for a whole number of years. But in addition to the work that he was, let's say, supposed to be doing, his great passion was to develop what's now become his famous celestial handbook. And the full title of his handbook is Burnham's Celestial Handbook, An Observer's Guide to the Universe Beyond the Solar System. And I can honestly tell you, this handbook is the best $40 I think you can spend in the astronomy world. It's not in print today, so if you want a copy, or actually it's 3 volumes, so if you want the 3 volumes, you need to go out to Amazon, or you need to go to eBay, and you can generally pick up a good quality copy of Burnham's for about $40. I've actually had a couple of these. I purchased a couple of these. I've got one myself. Here is volume 1 that we will be using this evening for Cepheus. And I've also, I got actually a pristine condition copy for my brother that I gave to him for a Christmas present, because my brother's also into astronomy as well. And this book was never officially supported by the observatory, and in fact it was self-published by Burnham when he first put it out there, and it was only later picked up by a publisher and then published properly in the format that you can get it today. And the revised edition was published by Dover Publications in 1978, and that's kind of the one that you can purchase today. Um, it's I won't give you the ISBN number. You can easily look it up if you want a copy. Just go to Amazon or eBay if you've not got a copy. And a friend of mine who actually runs the Bolton Astronomy Association in the UK recommended that I get this book when I sort of got involved in astronomy a couple of years ago, and it's an absolutely fascinating read. I love Burnham's, and I know that there are people on the stream tonight listening, Dave, Dennis, etc., who also love Burnham's as well. And hi to Catherine and Randy, and thanks for joining. We now have 17 people on board, so fantastic and great to be with you this evening. So Burnham was a really interesting character, and he was actually described in an article which is referenced at the bottom of this last slide as a bundle of contradictions. Burnham was a recluse. He was quite introverted, and yet he actually craved public recognition, particularly for the work that he was doing on the Celestial Guide. He devoted years of his life to the projects that he was involved with Lowell, and also with the Celestial Handbook. An incredible effort for a single person to put all of this together. And yet, when things kind of went wrong at Lowell and he was laid off because they were finishing up with the main project that they had hired him for, he then became basically incapable of looking after himself. And it kind of came to a somewhat tragic end, which has something to do with our own club, the San Diego Astronomy Association, and certainly has got a lot to do with San Diego, where he is buried. But I'll kind of save that for perhaps another evening if this works out tonight, and you kind of find this an enjoyable format. But it is a very interesting story of his life, of his life, of the time that he spent at the observatory, and then it's kind of a tragic finish to that. He actually died at the age of 62, which was relatively young, and he was basically homeless at the time. But I'll save the rest of the story for another evening. Okay, as you know, I'm a member of the San Diego Astronomy Association, and it sounds like my wife and daughter have managed to get themselves into another fight inside, but I'm sure they'll figure that out in a couple of minutes. You can find more information about the club on Facebook, and you can find more information about me on my YouTube channel. So if you go across to my YouTube channel, please subscribe and you'll hear about upcoming events. Okay, so I think that's the presentation done. So now I'm going to go onto the EAA part itself. I'm going to take us into SharpCap. I'm just waiting for my daughter to come through the back entrance here, which no, she's not going to. I thought she was going to come and get a kiss before she went to bed, but she's obviously decided she's not. But anyway, if she does, I'll just break briefly. So we're now looking at SharpCap. And one of the things we're going to do this evening, which you don't often see on EAA, is not only are we going to look at some galaxies and some nebula and some other interesting DSO stuff, but we're actually going to look at a few stars. They seem to get pretty much ignored on most EAA presentations. So tonight we're going to have a look at a few of the stars in Cepheus as well. And the reason we're going to do this is because Burnham's Celestial Handbook is basically arranged by constellation. So that's kind of the first arrangement. The first volume covers Andromeda through Cetus. The second volume covers Chameleon through Orion, and the third volume covers Pavo through Vel Cupula. And in each one of the constellations, he organizes the information in a specific way. And here comes my daughter just bouncing across the bouncing across the backyard here in her shoes that light up. Hello, sweetie. Do you want to say hello to everybody? Say hello to everybody on the online, please. Look right here in this microphone.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, that was my 5-year-old. She is also a little bit of a fan of Burnham. She's kind of got used to seeing Daddy with Burnham's Celestial Handbook in front of him. And she was out observing with me last night, weren't you? You managed to use the telescope mount for the first time, didn't you? And drive it across the sky, which she kind of liked because it was kind of like some of her video games that she plays on her computer. Yeah. All right. Are you going to sit down and join us for a couple of minutes? Okay, she is. So she's going to, my daughter Joy is going to sit down on the chair next to me and hopefully not knock anything over. And I am going to continue. So you just listen, sweetie, okay? And I'll turn the fan eater towards you as well because we like to be comfortable when we're observing, don't we? Yes, we do. Okay, so Burnham lays out his book by constellation, and then basically at the beginning of each of the constellations there is a table that lists doubles and multiple stars, variable stars, and then things like star clusters, nebulae, and galaxies. So that's the first part. Um, and my daughter's picked up the laser pointer, which she is now pointing at the moon. And she will probably be getting people to start phoning in saying that they've seen some sort of UFO going across the sky. Is that right, Joy? Okay. So anyway, and then after that, he then deals with the major stars of the constellation and gives you quite a lot of information about that. And then following that, he will look at some of the notable DSOs within that constellation. And that's basically the layout through the entire book. The one thing that there is in the first volume, there is an introduction to sort of the general universe and everything associated with the universe and stuff like that. There is a general introduction. And then when he comes across something new, when he's describing something, such as a certain type of star, he will then do like a sidebar and add additional information about the type of star and so forth and so on. So that's kind of the way that the Celestial Handbook is laid out. And Randy said, "Hi, Joy." So how about a hi, Randy, back?
Hi, Randy.
Okay, so thanks for that. And the snow we have melted today, but you've got snow. Okay, well, I think we're a few years away from seeing snow here in San Diego, Randy, and the way global warming is going, that's probably never going to happen. Anyway, so the first thing we're going to do this evening is we're going to look at some of, well, actually, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my big, I'm going to go to my big, okay, guys, now I've got 3 people out here, so the presentation is becoming increasingly more difficult. Right, Joy, you take your drink here and you sit there quietly, and I will continue. Okay, I saw the laser pointer shoot across the treetops there, didn't I? And I think everybody else on the screen did as well. Can you light up the palm tree, please? All right, let's have a look. There we go, with the laser pointer. And what we don't do is point that in somebody's eyes, correct? Okay, good job. All right. Right, so we are going to look at the constellation of Cepheus, and this is my star map that I use for my EAA presentations. It's carte de seal, and Cepheus consists of a number of stars in the main constellation that you can see here, and we're actually on Beta Cepheus at the moment, so the second star in the constellation. And you may hear me laughing slightly there. That's because this laser is going all over the place and I don't want to end up losing my eyesight at some point. So Beta Cepheus is also known by the common name of Alfric, You'll have to excuse my pronunciation of some of these names because between Latin and the other languages used here, it kind of confuses me sometimes. Um, and is a magnitude 3.5 star, and we can actually see it here on SharpCap. So we're actually looking at the image at the moment. And what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to reduce the gain here because the this star has a companion, and we're going to look briefly at this companion as well. And my daughter's now found out that she can light up her drink with the laser here. So actually, that looks pretty cool. That does kind of look cool, doesn't it? Right. Okay, can you drink and be quiet now while we... Okay, good job. So here we go. The main star, well, in fact, both of these stars are approximately 980 light years away. And the actual luminosity is about 4,000 times that of the sun. And the information that I'm going to be using here is all from Burnham's Celestial Guide. Now, bear in mind that the original guide was written in 1966. It was updated in 1978. So it is possible that some of the information in this, yes, UFO, Joy, thank you. Yes, it is possible that some of the information in here is a little out of date. But of course, one of the nice things about all the star maps that we have these days is that you can actually pull more recent current information up. Anyway, you can see very clearly in this image the 8th magnitude companion, which is about 14 seconds off from the main star, and you can see it actually very easily in our view at the moment. I'm using an exposure of about 700 milliseconds and a gain of about, actually my gain's a little high, I'm going to bring that gain down, it should be about around 400, but you can easily see the two stars here, the main star and the companion star. And this star Beta itself is a variable of extremely short period and small amplitude belonging to a class sometimes called quasi-Cepheids. And the variations of the star were first detected by Dr. E.B. Frost in 1902. Okay, sweetie, this is where you have to let Daddy concentrate here because he's trying to do multiple things here. Okay, sweetie? Okay, what do you say? Can you say, I am just going to sit here quietly to everybody online, please?
I'm just going to sit here quietly for everybody online.
Okay, fantastic job. Okay, right. Okay, and welcome to Elsa, who's also joined us as well. Fantastic. Okay, and so that is the first star that we're going to look at this evening. The next star we're going to look at this evening, which is an extremely interesting star in this particular constellation, is Delta Cepheus. So we're going to go and find that right now. And I believe Delta is right there. So I've selected it on my sky map. And unfortunately, my scope here is doing a meridian flip to get to it. So it's just going to take a moment to swing around. And when it does, we'll probably need to plate solve in order to bring that into the main field of view. But the reason that we're going to look at Delta Cephei is it's one of the most famous variable stars. And the typical example of a large number of short period pulsating variables whose light changes are not due to eclipse of a revolving companion, but to the actual pulsation of the star itself. And these are all Burnham's words from Burnham's Celestial Guide. So we are on board. Let me go to my SharpCap. Let me plate solve here, and hopefully we will then move on to the target. One of the reasons that I've recently installed ASTAP is because I was having issues with the all sky plate solver that I couldn't solve for some reason, which was kind of weird. Um, and also, I knew that this plate solver was extremely fast. And you've probably just seen there on the screen that literally within about 3 seconds of hitting the plate solve button, it solved and commanded the mount to slew, which it's now done. And it's moved approximately 0.34 of a degree there. And plate solving for me is actually pretty important because my field of view is only half a degree. So consequently, I don't need to be particularly far off, and I'll miss my target completely. So Delta, as I said, Delta Cephei is one of the most famous variable stars, and its variations were discovered by John Goodricke in 1784. And this kind of an interesting star, actually, and in fact, it's probably one that I will probably watch over a few nights when I've got the opportunity, because its variability is quite quick. It goes from maximum to minimum in about 5 days, and it varies by almost a full magnitude in terms of its variability. The decrease is kind of linear and over that 5 day period. The increase takes place is kind of linear as well, but it takes place over a 1 day period. So it's kind of a sawtooth waveform. And evidently it's extremely precise at 5.36634 days, or 5 days, 8 hours, and 48 minutes. And you've been learning all about clocks on online school today, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. And so we can see how our online schooling comes in useful for doing a little bit of live streaming to all these folks out here. And we've now got 20 people online, which is fantastic, Joy, from all over the country, and some other countries as well, including Canada. So that is fantastic. Okay, and then Burnham goes on to describe the characteristics of a Cepheid. Um, and I won't go through the entire thing because there's 2 or 3 pages of his description that covers things like periods and regularities and stuff like that. And please don't push any of the keys on my keyboard at the moment, Joy, because I'm right in the middle of a live stream and I don't want this to go down, sweetie. Um, and things like regularity and amplitude and light curves and pulsation theory and all that sort of good stuff. So he gives you a lot of information about it and a lot of examples of the 500 or so stars that have been discovered of this type, including some of the most famous ones, which include Eta Aquila, uh, Beta Doradus, and Polaris itself. Okay, so that's the second star we're going to look at this evening, or we've looked at this evening. And I believe also that this star has a companion star, which I believe we can see at the moment on the screen. I was just going to see if I can find out some information. Yes, it's a double star, and it's a well-known double star. The companion star is 6.3 magnitude and is located 41 seconds distance from the primary. So we're seeing it right here. And we can zoom in to see that in a little more detail if we so wish. Okay, right. The next star we're going to have a quick look at is Mu within this constellation. And for those of you who know something about this constellation, you already probably know what the common name for this particular star is, but I won't, and Joy was just going for the laser pointer again, but I won't spoil that until I get there in a couple of seconds. So let's see if I can find, nope, that's not it. I think it's that one there. Okay. So we're now slewing the telescope. Oh, and I don't know why my scope is doing this at the moment, because as you can see from my sky map, um, the The constellation is clearly on one side of the meridian, and yet as I move around the constellation here at the moment, my mount for some unknown reason um, wants to keep doing meridian flips. So I just need to be a little bit careful to make sure that one of the cables doesn't get snagged. But anyway, we're coming around to Mu Cepheus now. And as soon as we get there, because we've meridian flipped, Joy, please do not put the laser pointer in a cup of water. That okay, well, it doesn't matter. It's not going to work, is it? It's going to go and disappear. All right. Okay, so and ooh, hopefully we can see it. Um, I think we probably just can, but being one of the lower stars in this constellation, is actually right below one of the fronds of the palm tree I have in my back garden, where you can quite clearly see the house and the lights and everything next to it. So hopefully we will get a view of it. So I'm going to go in here. I am going to do a plate solve. And apparently my daughter has something to say. So while that is plate solving a second, what do you want to say to the good folks out there, Joe?
I wanted to say, the moon is far away in the distance,
Uh-huh.
and there's the man in the moon with the dog.
Is there a man in the moon with a dog? And we learned all about seas yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah.
We learned about the seas because we were looking at the moon yesterday, right? All right. So I have found my next target. I'm going to zoom back a little bit. I'm actually zoomed in quite a bit. And if you didn't know already, this is the Garnet Star, um, so named by Herschel. And Burnham went on to write, this is a famous and interesting object, is perhaps the reddest visible star to the naked eye in the north half of the sky. The variability seems to have been first noticed by J.R. Hind in 1848 and was confirmed by R. Gelander. The visual range is 3.7 to about 5. The period is irregular but seems to average around 755 days, with shorter superimposed oscillations of the order of 100 days or less. And good evening, Ross, or good morning, I should say. And thanks so much for joining us in the UK at some god awful hour in the morning. And Ross, for those online, is actually um, the leader of the Bolton Astronomy Association. I was searching for the right word there, and he said, yes, yes, Ross, I still am having meridian flipping problems, albeit that I did make those changes that you suggested the other day. I'm not sure what's going on at the moment, but I'll get there. Anyway, this is the Garnet Star, and it's um, like I said, it is one of the reddest stars that you can actually see with the naked eye. According to Burnham at the time, the exact distance of the star is uncertain, but I'm guessing now um, if we go into the database in Carte de Seal, it will actually give us some precise numbers. Um, let's have a look here and just see if it does. Maybe not. But I'm sure there's more precise information available now since the time that Burnham actually wrote his book. Right. Okay. So I think we've probably looked at a number of stars here. Actually, there is another interesting star here. And okay. And my daughter's going to say goodnight now. She's got very doggy eyes because she really doesn't want to go inside, but she is going to have to go inside because you've got online school in the morning. Come on, sweetie. Off you go. Say goodnight to everybody.
Good night.
Okay. So Joy's going inside now. And
Happy Halloween too.
okay. Yes. So she's very excited about Halloween at the moment, and in fact, she actually did some Halloween stuff tonight because obviously Yeah, we're not going to be doing Halloween in the traditional sense this year with COVID and everything. Um, there is one other interesting double star in this in Cepheus, and that's well, it was known by Kruger 60, which I think is probably one of the old catalogs. There is now a more a recent number for it, and that double star is described again by Burnham in some detail, and again might be another interesting star to observe over the period. Although I do believe it's a lot longer period star, so you would obviously need to observe it over a much more significant period. Okay, so I think we've kind of looked at some of the stars that are notable within Cepheus, and now we're going to look at some of the DSOs. I know that a couple of these DSOs may or may not be visible because of my issue here with how close Cepheus is to both the house and my palm trees, but we'll give it a shot. So the first one we're going to look at is NGC 1AA. And NGC 188 is kind of pretty low, and according to my sky map, is actually below my visible horizon. But we'll swing around to it and just see if we get lucky. We might find a gap between the palm trees to see if we can see it. And if we can't, then we'll just go to the next target. So the mount's just slewing now. You can actually see on my cart to seal, I use the big square just to show you where the mount's kind of going. The small square is actually the field of view of my camera, and it's orientated so that it matches the sky map. So it's one of the many things you can do in cart to seal in terms of setup. So let's see if we look at our. Oh, look at that! It looks like we might have got lucky. We might be pointing right between those two populars there. So let's see if I can plate solve and if we're in the right place here. All right, so let's zoom out. Let's just do a quick check of our settings here. Everything looks like it's good. Let's hit the plate solver. So the main delay now in plate solving is actually just capturing the first image. First of all, it waits for a frame. Oh, it actually must have taken the previous one. It corrected it really quickly, and it's already plate solved and moved the mount a fairly small amount here. So let's turn my live stacker on. And let's clear my live stack. And let's see if we can bring up our first DSO image of the evening. Okay, so I think that looks promising. We're going to capture a few images here. I'm going to do a quick color balance. Going to do a little bit more manually here. I'm just going to bring the red. I like to balance the histogram. I know there are a number of folks, and some probably online, who do not change the histogram balancing. I do. I think in part it's just personal choice, but so I've changed that. We will. I've got darks and flats applied this evening. So that will help us to get some slightly better images than a couple of evenings ago. And we're beginning to stack some frames here. So these are 12-second subs. I'm running at a gain of about 400. I tend to run this a little higher than some people
It just seems to work okay. Again, I kind of think you find out what seems to work and then kind of stick with it, which is typically the way I do things. So every 5 frames that we stack is a minute. And so as we get towards 10 frames, we'll be doing 2 minutes of imaging. And NGC 188 is a galactic cluster, as Burnham said, of unusual interest, located about 4 degrees from Polaris and therefore observable throughout the year. The cluster is approximately 15 minutes in diameter and contains 150 stars, the majority of which are fainter than the 13th magnitude. The cluster can be detected with a 6-inch or 8-inch scope using low power and appears as a large but dimly luminous spot with only a few of the brighter members showing individually. Of course, with EAA, since we're able to integrate over a much longer period of time, my 8-inch scope is actually showing many of the stars that go down to 13th, 14th, and probably 15th magnitude. So we get to see a lot more of the star cluster. And I'll probably just bring up my histogram a second. It's kind of interesting. This window is not quite doing what it's usually doing. So let me just I usually like to bring my black level to about there. And I'll bring up a little bit more detail by bringing my midpoint in. Probably a little bit too much detail, so I'm probably going to move those a little bit. Like that. And yeah, there we have a fairly decent rendition of NGC 188. If I was actually going to save this, I would have typed my target name in up here, but I think I've already got some images of NGC 188. So since I forgot to do that, I will not bother to save that. The cluster, as I said, can be detected visually in a 6 to 8 inch. The compute distance is slightly over 5,000 light years, and the distance above the galactic plane is about 1,800 light years. Spectropic observation, so the radial velocity would be about 30 miles per second in approach. 10 of the brightest members are yellow giants, and I think you can see from the color here that we're seeing from NGC 188, many of these stars are showing a yellow, reddish tint, as opposed to the more whitish stars that we would see in other parts of the sky. So these are all tending to be older stars. NGC 188 is famous as the oldest known galactic star cluster and has received much attention from astronomers specializing in the problems of stellar evolution. In the article on M13 in Hercules, a brief account is given of the method of determining relative ages of star clusters by plotting the members on an HR diagram. And so he then goes on to describe where NGC 188 sits on a color magnitude diagram, and compares that with a whole number of other DSOs, such as Pleiades and M41 and M11, etc., many of which sort of sit much more on what's called the main branch, whereas NGC 188 is definitely a side branch to the main branch. So we have a fairly decent image now of NGC 188. And I think Dennis is asking, Dave, have you got all 3 volumes of the book? Well, I have. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure Dave has as well, actually. I know Dave is a big fan of Burnham's, and apparently so does Jose. And as you said, Jose, he does some incredible descriptions, particularly if you're into visual astronomy, because obviously that was what he specialized in, and it is written very much from that perspective. He's also a bit of a historian. He likes to weave in some of the sort of historical perspective of some of these famous stars and where the names came from and stuff like that from the various early civilizations, what they meant to some of those civilizations, etc. And he does tend to weave that into a lot of the description of the stars in particular. And it does make for quite an interesting read. And he has a kind of odd and quirky sense of humor. Okay, so that's NGC 188. We're now going to move on to the second ESO that Burnham covers in Cepheus, which is NGC 6946. And I am hoping that we are going to get a view of this. If not, we may have to come back to it towards the end, because again, I think 6946 is pretty low on my horizon here. So let's see if we get lucky. Oh, actually, it's higher on my horizon. It's on the flip side of the meridian. So we're once again doing a meridian flip, which is fine because as long as my plate solver continues to work, meridian flips are okay. It's when my plate solver doesn't work that meridian flips become quite painful because of my limited field of view. So we're just moving on to that target now. It's just on the opposite side of the meridian. And let's see if we get view here. Ooh. Oh, that looks like it's really close. I do not think we're going to get to see that one quite yet. But maybe given another 20 minutes or so, we might actually see this rise into this area here, in which case we can get a shot at it. So we'll move on from NGC 6946. And I would like to view this if we can, because it's actually a fairly nearby spiral galaxy, and it's quite a pretty shape. So we are going to move on to another object in Cepheus that Burnham calls out, and that is NGC 7510. And I know that we can see this at the moment, or at least I'm hoping we could, because I viewed it earlier on this evening as I was checking all the equipment. Oh yeah, of course we can see this. This is going to be fine. But unfortunately, there goes my mount again as it pings backwards and forwards across this meridian. Maybe I should have picked Pegasus. I wouldn't have had this problem, but at least with the plate solver, it's not a big issue. And my mount is neutrally balanced as well, so it's not really a major issue. One of the other things I'm doing tonight is, as you know from some previous live streams, we've had a few instances where the stream is actually frozen. And that was primarily due to CPU load. I'm actually running I thought I was running an i3, but apparently, according to my task manager, I'm actually running an i5. And I have been maxing out my CPU. So I've got the task manager running at the moment where I can see my CPU and memory in particular. My CPU I've managed to reduce the load on by simply going from 720p at 60 frames to 720p at 30 frames, which is more than adequate for EAA live streaming. But my memory usage is at about 92%. So I don't have a lot of overhead when it comes to memory availability on this particular setup at the moment. But I think I'm solved most of the problems, and I don't think there's been any problems with freezing on the freezing on the live stream. And there's just a little bit of chatter going on about the typeface, and if that's got anything associated to do with Burnham's, I must say the typeface in the Celestial Handbook is not particularly pleasing. It's kind of pretty old-fashioned. But that being said, I wouldn't let it put you off getting a copy of the book, because if you can get past the typeface, it's certainly not a problem. So we're on NGC 7510. I'm going to, yeah, we're clear. We're going to bring that up. We're going to stop our live stack. We'll plate solve just so that we can bring our target into the center. And the nice thing, one of the things I really like about SharpCab is it brings everything onto one platform. I'm not really, apart from my sky map, I'm not really jumping around too much. I can do all my mount control down here. I've got full control of my image and camera and everything above us. I've got all the stacking and everything here. So I've just nudged the cluster up. And let's see what Burnham says about this while I start the live stacker. So this time I will actually type the name in here in case I want to save it. And I will hit my live stack. All right, let me clear the previous live stack. Okay, so we'll collect some images there. And so NGC, let's see what Burnham wrote about that. He may not have actually written a lot about it. In fact, I think it's one of the plates, unless I've missed it here. No, he doesn't really go into it in a great amount of detail. He just basically says it's an irregular star cluster lying on the Cepheus Cassiopeia border. And what's kind of interesting is when you look at Burnham's book, he was obviously using some, fairly large telescopes, and the picture that they have in here of this irregular cluster is taken by the Lick Observatory from their 120-inch reflector. And here we are today doing EAA live streaming with an 8-inch device, and actually getting pretty similar image. It's not too dissimilar. Here is the actual irregular cluster itself. And I will just bring my black level, get rid of some of that background noise, and maybe color balance a little. Oh, went too red. I'm going to bring the red back and bring it back a tad more. There we go. Probably bring, yeah. And so here we have a fairly nice developing image, which is actually not dissimilar at all to the image in Burnham's book from a 120-inch reflector. The only difference being diffraction spikes. And I did actually briefly put some tape on the front of the Cassegrain this evening to create some diffraction spikes, but I didn't put it on quite at 90 degrees, and rather than do it a second time, I just pulled it off. So we're getting no diffraction spikes, but putting a little bit of tape at precise 90 degrees across your telescope is a good way of actually mimicking diffraction spikes, which I do actually like to see on certain brighter stars. Okay, so we've collected about 2 minutes worth of imaging there on NGC 7510, and so I will just save that. I like to keep a record of each one of the images that I take during my EAA live streaming. I then have within Carte de Seal, if I go over to Carte de Seal a minute, I actually have an observing list that I've been creating that currently has about 40 objects in, and this one's actually filtered at the moment, which then allows me to see which are the primary targets or the best targets for any given evening. And these have been, I've kind of gone through these, and I know that each one of these looks visually nice in its own way. And so with this observing list, it's pretty easy to go online with a live stream, bring up the observing list, sort it by end, because that way you're essentially moving from west to east across the sky. So you're moving back from the targets that are kind of dropping towards the horizon. And it makes for a really quick way of getting online and doing an EAA live stream. Okay, so having said that, I think I've saved that image. And our next target that we're going to try and take a look at is, let's see if we can look at the other spiral galaxy that Burnham calls out at the end of this chapter, which is NGC 6951. So let's go NGC 6951. Let's see where that is. Okay, we probably can get to that. So let's see if we can meridian flip once more. I probably should have worked out which ones of these were all going to do the meridian flip, and then I could have probably ordered them. But anyway, such is life. But like I said, it doesn't really matter too much with the plate solving. And this is a spiral galaxy. And again, I have an air picture here taken with the Palomar Observatory 200-inch telescope. And I don't think I've actually viewed this particular target before. So I'm kind of interested to see. I'm not even, and it's pretty small. I can see from my, I'm not sure if you saw that information flash up on the bottom of the screen there, but I can see it's only about 3 degrees by 2 degrees, so it's actually a pretty small target. So the first thing we're going to need to do is just check. Oh, and we're in a tree again. Damn. Okay, we're just a tiny bit too close to that. Let's go back to our other spiral galaxy and see if that is in a little better position. Okay, and that was 6946. And yeah, we'll certainly go and find out. So we'll just nudge up. And we hit our next target. So let's go. Oh, I'm not having a lot of luck here, am I? So unfortunately, both of those are right in the fronds of that palm tree, and they're not coming out as quickly as I kind of hoped, which is a bit of a shame. But no matter. So let's see what else there is. I know there's a diffuse nebula as well in Cepheus. Let's go see if we can find that. That is NGC 7023. And one of the things I kind of like about Burnham is the fact that he kind of slows you down by doing everything by constellation. And what I normally do is I usually bring the books out, a glass of wine, and set the telescope up, and then just sort of slowly meander around whichever constellation is in main view, or the constellations which are in main view, and you're not kind of like bouncing all over the sky like you end up doing in sort of more typical observing sessions. You end up staying in a very targeted area of the sky, and it's kind of nice. It kind of slows you down, and you kind of take your time a little bit more. And because you're reading Burnham's really sort of interesting descriptions of what's going on, you know, it just slows the whole process down. It makes it a little bit more relaxing. So anyway, we've just slewed on to NGC 7023. A quick. Oh, these palm trees are driving me nuts here at the moment. So that is really close as well. So while we're just sort of, let's have a look now at our sky map and see if there's anything else that might be worth looking at here. I got a feeling Yeah, let's go up here. There's an open star cluster up at the top here, which is IC 1396. So we'll take a wander over there. And there's a couple of other little nebula and things that are in Cepheus that I can see that we'll go and take a look at as well. Okay, so let's go to, I think I might chop this tree down. It's kind of in the way. It's kind of like it seems to be like now hiding Cepheus, which is not the not what I had planned. Okay, so let's go over to NGC 7380, which I don't think that we've looked at. So let's go over here. And it's kind of interesting now, as you can see, my mount now is not meridian flipping. So I'm not really too sure why it's doing that. I've actually got it set up, Ross, so that it is favoring the current side. So maybe that's the reason it's not doing it. All right, let's see. I swear this tree is going. Cepheus is now hiding behind a palm tree. This is unexpected and rather annoying, as those on board have a little chuckle. Good. Let's see what else we got. Let's see if we can find one target. All right, I did see a little piece of nebulosity, or a couple of little pieces of nebulosity right out here. So let's go and take, here we have a bright nebula, LBN 572. I'm pretty sure I've never seen this. So let's go down there. And hopefully and now of course the mount has decided it's going to meridian flip again. Yes. Oh dear. Kind of interesting. I never quite understand this AVX mount. It's kind of cheap and cheerful, and it does a fairly decent job, albeit that I do give it a hard time a lot. But it does have some interesting little quirks about it. I mean, it's certainly not something that you would ever want to auto guide with, I can tell you that. So anyway, we're moving towards this new target, LBN 572. And since I know I've never, oh, and we're actually in a clear part of the sky, so that's good. And so I'm going to go LBN 572. Let's try that again. LBN 572. I've never actually imaged this before, so I am going to stop the previous live stack. I'm going to plate solve just so that we can get it centered. I'm going to have a sip of a nice Spanish wine that I picked up from Costco earlier today. Oh, we were pretty much on target. So the mount is just adjusting itself slightly. I'm going to set my live stack going. And let's see what LBN 572 gives us. Let me just make sure I got that number correct. Yeah, LBN, 527. I do that sometimes. I'm a tad dyslexic. And that doesn't look great, you know. Okay, so let's do 527. Let's clear that. And why is that got that weird color shift to it? So let's just check to see. Well, we're definitely clear of the trees. So let's see what's going on here. A really weird, my color balance has gone completely. So let's try and correct. This does not look too promising either. I think I don't know what's going on here. I should. Wow. I'm not sure where that color is coming from. That is very peculiar. So let's just, I don't think we're gonna see see our target with that much color. And I'm certainly the only I don't know quite what's going on here. That's kind of weird. I'm not sure, unless it's moonlight reflecting off of one of the palm fronds, palm fronds into the telescope. I'm not too sure what's causing this, because I'm actually clear of the tree here. All right. So since we're trying to sort ourselves out with Cepheus here, let us go up to NGC 780. Oh, and there goes the mount again. Woody, great to see you on board. Some gems can be set to go past the meridian and preset amount. I don't know about the AVX. Yes, the AVX can and currently is. Oh, and Dave mentioned the nebula NGC 40. Yes, there is a planetary nebula in Cepheus as well, and that was definitely visible earlier on. So let's go and take a look at NGC 7380, and if all else fails, we'll try the planetary nebula next. And we're running about 65 minutes so far. And everything was going great until about 10 minutes ago, when all of a sudden, oh dear God, if you hear a chainsaw starting up in a couple of moments, this tree is doomed, because it is now just clearly playing with me. All right, let's try NGC 40, which is a planetary nebula. I certainly viewed it earlier on today, and if this doesn't work, I'm going to move on to the constellation of Pegasus. All right, so one last meridian flip. Hopefully we actually get a target, and if we don't, then we will go somewhere else. Probably Pegasus. Yeah, it's interesting with the AVX mount. It only comes with one counterweight standard, and with the C8, it actually really requires two. You've either got to have one counterweight right down at the end of the counterweight tube, or it's much neater to have two counterweights and position them about halfway up the tube. Well, one's about halfway up and the other one's about 3/4 of the way up. But the C8 is kind of on the limit of what you can achieve. Right, so here we should be nice and clear. As Ross already knows, in case any of you are wondering what this contraption is here, this is an HF radio antenna, which is actually a lot lower than it should be. That's the Balun for it, because I am a radio ham. My call sign is Kilo 6 Yankee Oscar Alpha. And I used to be a pretty active radio ham, so I have this so that I can hook up my KX3 ham radio, which is upstairs in my office. All right, so let's see if we can get this planetary nebula and actually make a tiny bit of progress in Cepheus before we move on. So let's go and grab a frame. Hopefully we will have okay, so I'm going to need to rename this. And you can see now my computer is just delaying a little bit in its response to the keyboard and everything. And that is because I am currently banging against 100% CPU load, and it's just backed away from that again. So we actually have the planetary nebula in view already. So let's allow this to stack for a few frames, and then in fact I'll probably clear that stack one more time, so that we can make sure the mount's perfectly still, and then we can go and take a look at this planetary nebula. And NGC 40 is not covered in Burnham's handbook, but there is plenty of information online. This is also known as the Bowtie Nebula, and is also known by the name of Caldwell 2. It's part of the Caldwell series, and it's a planetary nebula discovered by William Herschel in the late 1700s. And it's basically composed of hot gas around a dying star. And if I remember correctly, it's kind of a reddish hue to it. So let's get ourselves color balanced. Bring that red down a little bit. All right, let's zoom in. And yep, here we go. So we may play around with just need to play around with things a little bit here to get the best image out of here, but we can quite clearly already see the central star in this planetary nebula, and the gas corona that sits around it in a spherical ball. Let me bring that down a little bit more. Bring the mid-level out. Might be able to see a little bit more detail in the sort of structure of the gas nebula. We can zoom in a little bit more. Here we go. I can pin that, and we'll just let that settle there for a minute. And what I will do, one of the things that I was asked by Woody the other night was it possible to show the DSO image without all the surrounding clutter? And the answer to that question is yes. So I am running on a second screen here at OBS Studio, or OBS in studio mode, and I have a number of preset scenes that I can select from. And so the scene I'm now going to select from is a full screen DSO, and essentially what that's going to do, and I need to be a little bit careful where I position this, is it's going to capture about this area of the screen. I've set it up to capture this area of the screen here. So when I do the transition in OBS Studio, yep, perfect. I am going to transition now, and you should now see on your live stream the DSO image standing alone without any of the clutter of SharpCap or any of the air programs that I might have up and running on the screen at the time. And actually that's pretty straightforward to set up in OBS. There were some really good tutorials on OBS. It's an extremely powerful live streaming package. As I kind of learn more about it, I'm beginning to realize just what you can do with it, and you can really improve your production quality. As you can see now on these live streams, I'm able to do all the transitions seamlessly with nice fades. There's none of the sort of stuff that you saw on some of the earlier live streams where, you know, sometimes it kind of looked a little messy for a few seconds as I was flipping between OBS and something else. And by running OBS on a second screen, it really just makes this whole thing production-wise a lot slicker. And it's been kind of fun to learn that. And it's kind of interesting, actually. I found some of the most useful tutorials are actually being done by pastors, because obviously they've been taking their churches online during COVID. And there's some pastors who've done some really good tutorials on OBS and how to use, you know, the whole scenes thing and how to use multiple cameras and so forth and so on. So it's been kind of fun. So anyway, I think we got a pretty decent image there of NGC 40. I am actually going to transition back to my complete workflow. And one of the nice things about OBS Studio is that you can select a scene and preview it before you actually send it out onto the stream. So I can now see what I'm going to send out onto the stream, which is basically the image with sharp cap around it, and I can actually make some changes in terms of where my planetary nebula sits in the display space, and I can do all of that without you guys seeing what's going on. And then I can just do a transition. So when I do the transition, it will transition hopefully nicely across to sharp cap. You may have actually have seen the DSO full screen image shift as well, because I was actually playing around with it on the previous screen. So anyway, all technical stuff. So anyway, we're back to our planetary nebula here, and we've got a pretty decent image, I think, of this. I might just bring up the histogram here one more time and just not sure. No. Oh, actually, this is kind of interesting because now we're actually seeing a little bit of the structure in the sort of outer part of the gas cloud now, where you can see these filaments are like folding over on each other, and there's clearly some structure out here. It's kind of neat. So yeah, you can play around with the histogram so that you can see more or less of the particular features you're looking for. Okay. Yes, says Woody. Yes, that is indeed. So, does anybody else have any requests in Cepheus, assuming that I don't actually run into a palm tree again? I'm going to have one more go at NGC 6946 before we perhaps go somewhere else, just to see if we can get a view of this thing. And I got to remember here, I need to save this image. So let me go do that as well before we move on. Okay, so my wife has a meridian flick when she runs out for coffee in the morning. Yes, I know just how she feels. And considering how small the object is, I think it's quite nice. Yes, you can actually, and you know, obviously, if I was running without the focal reducer in here, that would bring this up a little bit, albeit that I'd run it F10, and I suspect I could probably even get a really nice image with it if I put the Barlow in as well. And even though I wouldn't be collecting too much light with each sub, stacking of 7 or 8 minutes of that imagery, I could probably get a pretty decent image, because this is actually quite a bright planetary nebula. All right, so we were just going to, I was just going to see if I could hit this spiral galaxy before we left, kind of complete my journey that Burnham describes in for this particular constellation before we finish here. All right, so maybe not. We might get lucky. We'll give it one more shot. This is when you wish you were live streaming from somewhere like TDS, which is our dark sky site in the desert, because obviously we are pretty unobstructed from there. Whereas from my house here in San Diego, albeit that it's very convenient, I only have about a 90-degree view of the sky, so it's not super good. Yeah, and that tree's actually, it's getting worse. So rather than the constellation actually moving away from the tree, it's moving into the tree, so it's getting worse here. Okay, so I think we're probably done with Cepheus. Right, so let's just go quickly over to Pegasus, because I know that I can see Pegasus without any problems at all. And we'll just see what Burnham's got to say about some of the things in Pegasus before we perhaps call this an evening. And we're down to Mike Jerry. Dark skies aren't very useful when the moon. Yes, the moon is super bright here tonight. And in fact, it's it, I've got actually a really nice picture. The moon is right behind me. I was viewing it with my daughter last night. Actually, even that was quite a useful exercise because I realized that my view that I was showing on the screen was actually horizontally flipped to reality. So I was able to correct for that by just correct. So I've now changed if you don't know how to do that in SharpCap, there is under the image control, you can do a variety of flips. So I did a horizontal flip, and so the image that we're actually seeing now aligns with what you actually see in the sky, which is kind of nice. Yeah, we were walking around the moon, and I was showing her what some of the seas were and stuff like that. And I'm trying to get her more and more interested. She's a smart little cookie, and it's kind of nice when you can when she's interested in stargazing, because she comes and sits out with me for an hour or so and chatters away, and it's kind of fun. We get to spend some quality father daughter time, which is kind of cool. I think she's actually going to be joining us, Dave, on our next live stream that we do from Oak Oasis. For those of you, I'm not sure that we've actually got the date finalized yet, but we will be doing a SDAA live stream from Oak Oasis, which is one of the county parks, which is actually not too far away from where I live, around the 12th to the 14th of November. I think we're still finalizing the date with them. We've got some I was just reading Woody's comment. We've got a good view of the horizon there, and we should be able to see quite a few different things. Right, so we're going to go over to Pegasus, and yeah, let's go and let's go do that. All right. So this is the constellation of Pegasus here. And you can see, according to my horizon, that we are well placed to view Pegasus. And I'm going to start with one of the stars. I'm going to swing onto Alpha. Whoops. Oh, that's the Andromeda one. Hold on. Is that part? That's weird. So is this star? Huh. That's kind of interesting. I've never noticed that before. So maybe somebody can add some detail here. Is this star shared between two constellations? Because that's clearly part of. Well, oh, let's have a look. Oh no, it's not. No, so that is Andromeda. So that's the Alpha star in Andromeda. So Alpha Pegasus is over here. So that's where we're going to start. So let's slew the telescope. This should be our last. Oh no, it's actually. I was going to say this should be our last meridian flip of the evening, but it hasn't meridian flipped. It's stayed on the current side, so it must be doing its favoring current side thing. And Dave has asked for NGC 7814 Edge on Galaxy. Okay, we can certainly do that. So let's go out here. Let's just do a quick plate solve so that we can just make sure we're in the right general facility. Oh yeah, okay. So as Dennis quite rightly said there, Alpha is shared with Andromeda. I did not know that. I did not realize that there were certain stars that were shared between constellations. So obviously you live and learn. All right. In fact, I don't need the live stack going here. Yeah, there's my star. So this is the primary star in the constellation of Pegasus. And it's known by the common name of Markab. And then, kind of typical of the way that Burnham often goes about just looking at stars, he then goes on to describe where it came from and how it kind of fits into the old civilization. So, he's talking about Greek mythology, and he's mentioning coins where Pegasus is featured, and so forth and so on. And it's fairly typical of a lot of the stuff that Burnham writes about when he is, either talking about stars or talking about stars in particular. He likes to go into the history and some of the philosophers and who first saw it and so forth and so on. It's kind of interesting. And the star itself is not particularly remarkable, except for it's obviously the brightest star within this particular constellation. And I'm just actually, I wasn't really expecting to be on Pegasus this evening, so I haven't really looked too much through this. But there are obviously a number of stars, a considerable number of stars in Pegasus. And I was looking to see if any of them were particularly interesting. There are a couple of double stars, and he describes the orbits and so forth and so on, or binary stars, and he describes the orbits. But none of those really stand out per se. Obviously, the target, which is of, I guess, best known within Pegasus, obviously is M15. So we'll take a quick look at M15 first, and then we will go over to the Edge-on Galaxy NGC 7814. And as Dennis said, Markab is only 133 light years from San Diego, so pretty close. Should be able to get there tomorrow. Okay, so let's go take a quick look at M15. I'm sure everybody, whoops, got the wrong one. Okay, and we'll just slew across. Now it'll be interesting now. Yes, now we're going to, are we going to meridian? No. Huh. You know, and I had this problem last night as well. And I am not sure what's going on here at the moment. I'm pretty sure I should be on M15. According to my horizon, I should be completely free and clear. And I'm actually pointing right at the house. So clearly I've got a little bit of work to do here. So M15 isn't going to work. So let's go and do what Dave said. Let's go to NGC 7814. And this is kind of an interesting bit of a theme, I guess, because, yeah, okay, so this is completely the opposite end of Pegasus, so everything should be good, and we are probably going to meridian flip again. Here we go. It's preparation, right? In terms of when you're doing a live streaming event like this. I was pretty prepared there as we went through Cepheus, because I'd obviously looked through. Well, I'm pretty familiar with Cepheus anyway, but I'd kind of gone through Burnham's stuff. But now I'm kind of gone over to Pegasus. I'm not quite as familiar over here, and I haven't checked. Well, I'm fairly familiar with Pegasus, but I haven't checked line of sight to some of the target objects. So, if I miss the odd one. And then once we've done 7814, we'll probably do 7331 as well, and just see what that looks like. I am pretty close to the moon now, or at least sort of pointed in, but we'll see. We'll see if we get.
Yeah, and in fact, you can see the moon right here. So I'm not a million miles away from the moon now, and you can see it's pretty bright. So we should still be able to image though. So let me just check my, let's come up to about 12 seconds. And let's do a plate solve so that we can make sure we're in the right place. And we'll go from there. All right. I must say, I am pretty impressed with this plate solver. This is ASTAP. It's written by a Dutch guy. I don't know quite how he's got so much speed out of it, because basically they all use similar engines to actually do the plate solving. And so I'm not exactly 100% sure how he has managed to get this thing to run as quickly as he does. I do know it uses a sort of dedicated database. So I don't know whether he's done something with the indexing or whatever in that database, but it does run extremely quickly. And once you've kind of got used to plate solving, as long as it works, it's definitely the way to go. As you can see, when we get this first frame up, my target is right in the center of the image, and it's practical. Well, and it will be there every time. The only problem is that if you kind of got too used to plate solving and the plate solver suddenly doesn't work as it didn't down at Helix, you've got to do a multi-star alignment, and then you've got to do some other techniques because you're not going to be anywhere near as accurate. So you can get a little bit over reliant on it. But I do find the plate solver extremely good. All right, so we're going to capture a few images now. Let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah, we can see our galaxy forming here. I'm not going to, let's just, yeah, we can certainly see the edge-on nature of the galaxy. Here, you can see the dust lane running right down it here. We're not going to get the best of images tonight because obviously I am pretty close to the moon. But you can certainly see the central bulges of the galaxy, and you can certainly see the central dust lane. And we'll just collect a few images here and see what sort of settles out. And often with galaxies, it's often better to go actually into black and white. They tend to show a little bit better. So, I mean, I might actually, in addition to using the main histogram here, I may do a little bit of work over here as well to see if we can get the best image possible. But let's see. So again, sort of go while we're waiting here. Let's just put that in about the right spot, and I'll just go into OBS and I'll set this up and transition across to it. So I've just gone to a full screen view, and you can actually see on the as it switches to the full screen DSO picture, you see the gray bar at the bottom, and that's obviously where the area that I've selected to display full screen is actually just picking up the bottom or the top of one of the windows below it as well. So that probably needs to be reset, but I suspect it's probably more due to the fact that the windows are in slightly different positions this evening from when I set this up the other night. But even so, again, if you want to do the full screen DSO shot, it's pretty easy to set up. And there are some other
things that you can do with OBS, which is kind of nice. You can actually display just a given window, so that you don't get the rest of the clutter on your desktop. You can select areas. There's some kind of really cool features. And considering this tool is free, it's a brilliant piece of streaming software. I'm very impressed with it, and it seems to be extremely stable, and it's well understood and well documented. Yeah, and I'm just watching my CPU load here. It's kind of interesting. It's dropping down to about 40% and then just pulsing up to 100 briefly in sort of a very periodic type form at the moment. I'm not sure what's causing that, but it's clearly something loading up the PC briefly. But at least we have got away from the issues that we've had before. Right, so I'm going to transition back to the SharpCap view so I can get my histograms and everything back. And okay, so I'm going to do this a different way. There is kind of a second way that you can use the histograms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bracket, or I've already bracketed the object with the main histogram. And I'm now going to do most of the work in the display histogram. I'm going to see if I can get a better image up here. And you can already, yes, I think I have got a better image. And you can see I've got another galaxy down here as well. We'll see if we've got other galaxies in the image as well. I have actually recently loaded a galaxy database into Cartesiel, and I don't know how many galaxies are in there, but it's supposedly around 40,000 or so. And yeah, there are galaxy clusters everywhere. It's kind of interesting. So I'm sure on other evenings when I've got perhaps a different optical chain, I might go looking for some of these smaller targets. Okay, so let me just, and with the histogram controls, if you want to move them slowly rather than fast, you can press the shift key and then drag them across and they just step across slowly. So I'm just trying to step this histogram across just a little bit. Here we go. So you can see the galaxy showing up here. And as Dennis pointed out, this is some distance away. This galaxy is about 50 million light years away. So a galaxy far, far away. Oh, and that's interesting. I wonder what that is. Huh. Alrighty, let's go. All right, let's. I wonder what that is. Is that a nebula or is that a dust bunny? It's one or the other. I'll go into color in a minute. We'll find out. But as you can see, we've got our galaxy here. You can really see the dust lane going through it here. You can see the center part of it. We're not getting too much detail out here, and that's probably not surprising considering how close we are to the moon. And we've definitely got another much smaller galaxy off here. And I suspect we've probably got a few other galaxies in here as well. But this is kind of interesting. I don't know whether this is a dust bunny or whether it's actually something else. So I'm gonna reset my display over here. I think that's a dust bunny. I am going to go in here. I'm going to bring some color. Yeah, that must be. Huh. I think it. Yeah, it's a dust shadow. Needs a fresh flat. Yes, I think you're right, Ross. I do need something. I'm not sure. That's obviously appeared in the last day or so. But again, not to worry. But again, you can quite clearly see here our galaxy and the galaxy on the side here. All right. Okay. So I think to finish off this evening, let us just go to, unless anybody, let me have a quick look here. Yeah, NG, and in fact, I think Burnham actually covers this galaxy. Let's see what Burnham said about this particular. Nope, he didn't. He features it in one of the pictures at the back, but I don't think he actually says. Let me have a look here. He certainly talks about NGC 331. No, he doesn't talk about this particular galaxy apart from to say that it's an example of a precisely edge-on galaxy, and there's a picture taken from the Mount Wilson Observatory. There's also a couple of other interesting galaxies here. NGC 7479 is a particularly pretty S-shaped galaxy that Mike was imaging the other night, and I've imaged previously. And then there's a couple of well-known clusters. There's the Stevens Quintet, and the galaxy that I think I'll finish off on this evening, which is the Dalit galaxy, which is centered around NGC 7331. So let us just go and grab that. NGC 7331. Yep, and we'll just swing around to that. And actually, I might just finish off with the moon tonight. Although I guess we'll have to meridian flip back. I do not understand what this mount is doing. It's kind of just developed a mind of its own at the moment. I have no idea why it's doing this. Another problem or challenge. It's like you solve one problem with EAA and 3 more appear. It feels like playing whack-a-mole at times. But at least the majority of it is working now. I'm pretty pleased with where I'm going with this particular setup. Aloha. Okay, so it looks like we have Jose and Maureen in Kona. And if you've just joined us, thanks very much for joining us. I'm not sure how much longer the stream will be going, but thanks so much for joining us. And I believe you were on the stream the other night that I did. And tonight we've been featuring some of the descriptive stuff that is in Burnham's Celestial Handbook, An Observer's Guide to the Universe, which is my favorite astronomy book, or trio of books. It's volumes 1, 2, and 3. 2,000 pages of really interesting stuff. I've actually read this end to end twice now. I'm really very impressed with these books, and it is kind of fun just going through and comparing some of the pictures that were taken 30 or 40 years ago with some of the large telescopes that are out there, with the Lowell Observatory and Mount Wilson and Palomar, etc., and comparing it now with what you can actually do with a 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain and some EAA technology, and to be honest, there's not too much difference in a lot of cases. It is amazing how far we've moved forward in the period of 30 or 40 years. Right, so let me stop the live stack. Let me do a plate solve. Again, we're not going to get the best of images this evening because I am, at least I am actually swung away from the moon again. So from that perspective, might get a slightly better image. My plate solver has already done its work and the mount has been nudged to deal with the offset. going to reset my stack, and we'll just start collecting a few images. I'm going to reset that stack again because I can see that there was a little bit of movement in the mount still. It hadn't quite settled. It does take 5 or so seconds for the mount to settle. Okay. And I think we can, well, I know we can see our main target there. As you can see, pretty accurate. Although I will say, in terms of absolute accuracy, the all sky plate solver would literally put the target right there. This one does tend to be out by about a minute or two, but you know, it's not a big error by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a slight difference. But the all sky plate solver would take 30 or so seconds to solve, and so you add that gap, which I personally didn't mind particularly, but the fact that it stopped working and I couldn't get it working was a bit of a blow, and so that's what caused me to go have a look at this one, and I'll probably stick with it now because it's doing a pretty good job so far. Let me turn that off. Let me bring the red back. It's kind of interesting tonight, and I suspect it's the moon that's causing this, that the color balancing is a lot more off than it would typically be, but I suspect it's probably just the moon. So we are seeing the main galaxy NGC 331 here, and we can start to see some of the companion galaxies out here. So let's just zoom in a little bit. Okay. Bring that into black and white. Certainly, if you do a lot of galaxy hunting, a monochrome camera is certainly far better than a color camera. More sensitive, and galaxies certainly do show nicely in black and white. And also the other thing you probably want to be doing, which I'm not, is you want to be collecting the near IR light coming from the galaxy as well. But I actually have a cut filter in, so that I'm losing that as well. So there are a couple of things that you can actually do to improve your galaxy imaging. So the last of Burnham's, so I'm just going to go through the last of Burnham's descriptions here before we finish off. And he describes NGC 7331 as follows. It's a spiral galaxy located about 4.3 degrees north and slightly west of Eta Pegasi. NGC 7331 is a galaxy whose photograph is often used in astronomy texts to illustrate the probable appearance of our own Milky Way system if seen from intergalactic space. It is a highly tilted spiral of type SB, appearing in moderate telescopes as an oval mass of about 10 minutes by 2.5 minutes, with a total magnitude of about 10. Many bright nebulous regions mark the outer arms, and A. Sandridge at Palomar finds that the spiral pattern can be traced to within 10 seconds of the nucleus, although I don't think we're going to be doing that. But we are beginning to see some of the spiral arms now beginning to form out here. Probably not going to get a tremendous amount of detail on them. I know when Mike images these from his dark sky site up in Death Valley here, he will often sit on the target for about 10 to 12 minutes. And you do actually start to see some really nice detail in some of these galaxies, which I don't think we're going to get today. But again, considering the conditions and the fact that we're completely full moon here, we're not really doing too badly. So I mean, at least it's nice to be outside. It's relatively warm here tonight in San Diego, and I do have a little fan heater with me as well, which I've just put on. And I'm not sure if this information has changed, because obviously it is somewhat older. I'm trying to find out just in the text here. There was actually, interestingly enough, quite a prominent supernova in this galaxy back in 1959. And there are a couple of comparison pictures of the supernova taken from the Lick Observatory in Burnham's book. And for those of you that have been on the last couple of live streams, we did take the opportunity the other day to view another supernova, which was the supernova in NGC 514, which is very prominent. And at quite some distance from the galaxy itself, or at least the visible part of the galaxy. So yeah, we've done a couple of supernovas recently as well. In addition, the other one we did was NGC 7722. So about half a degree from NGC 7331 to the southwest is a tight little group of remote galaxies called the Stevens Quintet. And I won't bother to image those tonight because they are pretty small, and you do need some good conditions to see those with any degree of interest. All right, fantastic. So I think we've got a fairly decent rendition. I can see at least two other galaxies in this image. There's one here, and one here. I'm not sure where I think there's four in this image. I'm not sure if maybe I need to zoom back a little bit. 1, 2, 3. Can't see the fourth one at the moment. Anyway, we are there, and thank you for that lovely image. In fact, I'll just throw it up full screen for you just before. Let me just move that into the right place and bring it up full screen. So hopefully you will have a slightly not much bigger view, to be perfectly honest. With the square sensor on the 553, the view doesn't actually increase much. If you had for instance, a more regular sort of 16 by 9 sensor, format sensor, you could actually, it would be far more impressive going from the view that you got on SharpCap to the view that you get once you take all the clutter away. But anyway, there's a few moments of NGC 7331. And I think just to finish off, since the moon is full, why don't we just swing the telescope onto the moon? Dave, this will be, I guess, a talking point tomorrow for our call with one of the prospective dark sky sites that we're hoping to do an EAA live streams about. But one of the things we can do if the moon is in the right place is obviously image it really easily. So we'll just finish off, I think, with an image of the moon. So, and I will bring this up just using CPWI rather than carte to seal. So I've got two different ways that I can bring targets up. I find that carte to seal is by far the best. If you do happen just to know the name of the target, then CPWI works fine as well. So we're just doing our final meridian flip of the evening. And I'm swinging towards the moon here. Oh, and I've forgot to come out of full screen mode. So let me just go into Studio and transition back to the full screen. My desktop as opposed to the thing. And let's go see if we've got the target. Well, we're kind of close. So let's go look and see if we've got it here. We're going to have to obviously make some adjustments. I can I'm going to bring my image down. I'm going to going to turn off my live stack because I don't need that. Oh, that's the moon. And now I'm going to just start playing with things so I can actually bring my exposure down. Yep. So now I can bring my gain down. Okay, we're getting there. Let's just bring the exposure down a little bit more. Yep. That doesn't look too bad. And let's just nudge the moon into the screen. Here we go. I think this will be a pretty nice way of finishing off this evening. Not that I know a great deal about the moon at all. It's not really one of the targets I look at particularly often, but it's kind of pretty. And I don't know if I put it out onto the this one, but I put it out on one of the emails that I sent out to let people know I was going to live stream. When we came back from Costco shopping this evening, the clouds were rolling in, and my daughter said to me, she said, Dad, she said, can God make the clouds go away for you this evening? And I said to her, well, I think he might have more important things to do, but he obviously was listening because we have a fantastically clear evening here in San Diego this evening. So it's kind of worked out. Very nice. So let me just, here we go. Let's just swing that across. And the one problem, well, it's not really a problem, but the one thing that I've got, you'll notice here that the moon is just, because of the distancing that I've got between my focal reducer and my camera, the moon is just too big. I need to move my camera back just a tad, probably about 20 millimeters, to give me a slightly bigger field of view so that the moon actually sits nicely. But I think that being said, you can see that we have a pretty decent image in there. Kind of interesting because I'm not live stacking, so I'm just wondering if I've got any color control, because if I had, I'd probably drop it into black and white. I probably could change. Let's just see what happens if I do. If I change the color space. Yeah, so I've changed the color space. So I've now gone into black and white. And I can actually, so this is my histogram of my incoming image. So I'm pretty much set in the right place. I mean, I could nudge the exposure up a bit probably. There we go. Yeah, pretty much set in the right place. And I can once again go full screen. So let me do a transition. There we go. Yeah, so I think, Gary, can you show us the American flag on the moon? I'd like to, but I don't think I can zoom in far enough, although I can zoom in a pretty long way. And actually, the moon is actually showing quite nicely tonight. I'm sure if I took a short video here and then ran it through the appropriate stacking software, I could get it to show really nicely in terms of a picture. But image processing is not really my interest. So yeah, it's just clipping. It's just a shame that I'm just clipping the top and the bottom of the moon there. But anyway, I think that's probably a great place to finish tonight. So I really appreciate everybody joining me. We've still got 14 of you on board, so fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. This was kind of a little bit of a tryout of a themed presentation around Burnham. Let me know if you guys enjoyed it. And if you'd like me to perhaps do another one around perhaps another constellation, maybe we look at Pegasus in more detail, or wait for one of the other constellations to come up, et cetera, and do it again. And like I said, there is kind of a really interesting backstory to, well, it's kind of tragic really, but anyway, finish to the way that Burnham, met his end. And so one day I'll probably share a little bit more of that. But it is a truly fascinating book. It's a lot of fun to read. If you haven't got a copy, I would strongly recommend it. And let's see. Yes, so I think this is the final image. I will say goodnight. I will transition across to my goodbye slide. Again, a really good book. And like I said, if you want to find out more information about myself, live streaming and stuff like that, just go to my YouTube channel, which you can find quite simply by searching for my name, Gary Hawkins, EAA. And if you want to learn more about the San Diego Astronomy Association, please go to our Facebook page or our webpage, which is at the bottom of the screen. It's been fantastic to have everybody on board this evening. I wish everybody a good night, and I look forward to the next live stream with you. And hopefully, if I can find, here we go. And hopefully, if I can find the right page here on my browser, I can close this all down nice and neatly, and go from there. So once again, I'll say good night. I'll sign out for this evening and look forward to seeing you again on the next live stream.